Hello, Fractured States players. We're going to do our second AAR for the play-by-post Catawba Crossing Battle Report, Decisions and Outcomes. As a reminder, these AARs, or after-action reports, are free of judgment. They simply highlight critical decisions that the players made, and then the outcomes that came from those decisions. You can learn the lessons yourself, okay? So it's the 1st of August, and the world in which we're exploring is a fractured states of America after the Civil War, where both the U.S. and Confederate governments have collapsed. There's an area in the Carolinas where a faction from the South would like to take control and a faction from the North would like to oppose them. They're both maneuvering to control Charlotte, which sits right in the middle of the two areas. The northern faction is led by Zebulon Vance, the former governor of North Carolina. He has as his commander a General Clark. Clark is in somewhat of a rush. He puts together two forces, one under a Colonel Connolly, and Colonel Connolly wants to do well, and he wants glory. So with glory, he can get more command, or a higher level of command. Lieutenant Colonel Crawford is the commander of the second group. He is a tired veteran from the Calamity. He would prefer to achieve his objectives, remain employed as an officer in Vance's army, and keep his men intact. So he's more, by nature, he's more about preserving his forces. And the third player was Hale, who was the reporter sent by Vance to keep an eye on things, and Hale is actually traveling with Connolly. From the south, the Protector, Wade Hampton, is sending up his 2nd Legion. His 1st Legion was what he formed at the beginning of the Calamity. This 2nd Legion is modeled on that, is under the command of a Colonel Haygood. Haygood wants to do well for Hampton, succeed, and get a higher level of command. The swing vote here, the wild card, is the Parson Hezekiah Thunder. He lives in the area where the battle is about to take place. He's a veteran of the Calamity. He's got pretty severe PTSD. He's now a parson and an evangelical preacher with a small community that he calls the people of the anointed. Though many of his men were with him in combat, and they are elite soldiers of the Calamity, so they really know how to fight. Smaller in number, though, they are unaligned with either the northern or southern forces. So here are the problems that the players face. Connolly and Crawford, provisioned on the same side, need to coordinate in order to outnumber the Hamptonist forces. Individually, they are undergunned. Together, they outnumber the Hamptonists. However, Connolly kind of wants all the glory for himself, so his predisposition is to kind of handle it himself, but he doesn't have the force to do so. So how they work together and coordinate is the first problem in the game. The second one is that Haygood has 3 forces that he needs to defeat or deal with in detail. They're coming from different directions. He doesn't really understand them. So he's got a bit of a maneuver problem on his hands. And finally, the Parson's elite deacons are a wild card. They can either sit by and watch, or they can engage. If they engage, they're pretty ferocious. So how each of the other 3 players, Crawford, Connolly, and Haygood, deal with the Parson matters. Finally, all of them have a lack of information except the Parson. They don't even really know who the Parson is when the game starts. Now, as the game starts, the Parson sends out messengers to all 3 of the commanders and basically tells their commanders to not fight near his land. So the 3 commanders have a choice of how they're going to deal with the Parson and his messengers. The first decision we'll look at is that Haygood, the number 3 on the map, decided to not trust the Parson, and he attempted to seize the messenger, and through a bit of really bad luck, the messenger was able to escape, but he was wounded. He was able to get word back to the Parson that the Haygood contingent was not friendly to him. So it immediately lined the Parson against Haygood. So that was the first decision. The second decision is that Crawford, who's the number 4 commander on the board right now, on the map right now, decided at the crossroads where he had to decide to either go east or head north up into the mountains. He decided to head east. This has a couple of effects on his positioning. If he goes north into the mountains, he then joins with the Parson and Connolly to the north to create a large force there, but it leaves a door open for Haygood to actually retreat. If he goes east, it cuts off Haygood, but he loses really the ability to coordinate. So it's a pretty important decision, but he chose to go east in this case, and you'll see how that plays out over the course of the battle. Because the parson and Connolly find out pretty much simultaneously that Haygood attempted to attack the messenger, they form a quick alliance, and the parson then lines up and agrees to coordinate with Connolly, making the situation such that Haygood has nearly overwhelming force against him, 3 different forces against him, and he doesn't really understand about the parson yet. But he chooses to head north anyway, and he's really heading right into the jaws of an ambush. So his choice to go north on limited information plays out in the remainder of the scenario. And then as his column, number 3 on the board here, as his column spreads out and he goes northward, Crawford has a decision as he reaches the railroad tracks. He can either rush across and kind of get involved, in which case Haygood would have been warned that he was about to be surrounded. But he instead chose to remain secure. He gathered his forces by the railroad track, keeping out of sight so that when he did cross, Haygood had committed and it was too late for him to escape, given the fact that the river was to his immediate east. Honorable mention at this point in the battle is for Connolly, who spreads his forces out to make sure that nothing is coming up the eastern road. He uses his cavalry and his infantry to keep a screen to the east. So really, the trap for Haygood is pretty much set. And once it's sprung, it basically evaporates the entire Haygood command. And after the Haygood command has been pretty much destroyed, Haygood himself has been killed, and Connolly's forces are chasing him down across the river where they're fleeing. The parson moves his men in and seizes the cannon. And Connolly had actually taken the opportunity to have his cavalry go seize those guns as well, so there's a bit of a standoff there. And Connolly and the parson speak. You can see them on the board right now. And Connolly decides to not escalate. If he would have escalated, that would have become an incredibly bloody situation with his 4 units having to turn back around and assault uphill over these guns. And he chose the long-term plan of, let's keep the peace, let the parson have the guns, let's take the victory, take the W, and go home. So that avoided further bloodshed and cemented the victory. So at the end of the exercise, we had Connolly holding the field. His cavalry's escorting a shattered Hampton's force off the field. He's captured guns and rifles and equipment such that he's got at least a wagon's worth of booty to take home with him. The parson has saved his town. He has cannons that he's captured and very low casualties. And Crawford has surrounded the Southern Hamptonist forces, actually captured the wagons, and had a success there. So at the end, when we look at each of the characters and their personal objectives, Connolly wanted glory. The reporter Hale saw him masterfully maneuver his command, make an alliance with the parson, and then at the end graciously resolve the tension such that Connolly will get an incredibly good write-up in the paper and no doubt will be promoted to higher levels. So he achieved his objective. Haygood wanted to clear the road to Charlotte. He was unable to do that. In fact, he himself perished in the action, so he did not achieve his personal objective. Crawford wanted to keep his men safe and achieve the support, or maintain the support for Connolly. He was very successful in doing that. And the parson wanted autonomy and wanted to keep all these forces from subsuming his people, and he got some guns out of it as well. He accomplished his objective, so he was able to accomplish his objective as well. That's the after-action report on the Catawba Crossing play-by-post game. Well played by all, really a lot of fun, and everyone got together in the after party, and we're having a good time talking about it. So, well done, great game. We'll see you on the next Fractured States battlefield.